Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Burnout Avenue podcast. I am Zach Patton. Alongside me is my host, Josh Neal. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
A little bit tired here. You've got me doing this at midnight, so we'll try to get through this with the Sierra Mist, and hopefully the caffeine gets us through this.
Oh, yeah, it's just been a busy day for both of us. So we are doing this podcast pretty late, but you'll definitely we're glad you're listening this evening. It was definitely an exciting race weekend. I mean, Talladega is always exciting to talk about, exciting to watch, and let's get into it. Josh, tell me what did you think about the race?
It's probably, it's probably the best race of the year. I thought, we had action all day, and a lot of that had to do with not a lot of cautions. I think we all expected with this package, it was a lot of unknown. We come into the weekend, we'll talk about it here in a second, but so many guys bending the rules, having to be sent to the back before the race for failing inspection and stuff. So with that, I think a lot of people thought that this race was going to be hell, and I did too, honestly. But I was pleasantly surprised, with the lack of cautions, but we still had a great race, and we did not have the big one. So with the fact that we didn't have the big one, and if you want to call the big one, I would consider the one at the beginning of the race that took out several good cars. I would call that the big one. It ended a bunch of people's days, notably Kevin Harvick, I think, and Ryan Newman had some damage. You'll talk about it here in a minute, but just a couple of good cars that had damage to start the day. Long day for them. Kevin Harvick was probably at the house with 50 to go watching it. But, there at the end, we'll talk about that here in a minute. Should NASCAR threw that through the caution flag on the last lap, At first, I thought it was very controversial, but then, seeing everyone on Twitter talk about it, I sort of opened my eyes. But, just overall, I really enjoyed the race. Multiple leaders, multiple teams. Chevy was teaming up. Toyota would team up. Ford teamed up. It was just overall a battle of the three manufacturers all day, and it was really enjoyable.
Yep. So, I want to kind of get in. I want to kind of start kind of at the beginning of the race weekend. Like you said, it was definitely questionable what this new package with this 9-inch spoiler was going to create. I mean, there was talks the tandem racing might be coming back, but after practice, we realized it's still going to be the same pack, kind of the same pack racing. But what we got from these big 9-inch spoilers were, of course, by yourself, you were a lot slower. But when you got in these packs, these big 9-inch spoilers caused such a big hole in the air, and it allowed these cars to get such big runs. And you saw practice times that were like out of the door. I mean,
we had 204 miles per hour.
Yeah. So in practice one, you had people, you had cars eclipsing 202. A lot of the top 10 was mostly eclipsing 202. When you look at last year only had one practice. Most cars were either 202 or below. So, but then when you get into second practice for this year, you have over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have over 6 cars eclipsing 204 miles an hour. That is absolutely crazy. And that's because these big spoilers were punching such a hole in the air for cars behind. It would allow the cars behind to get such good runs. And it really just, you saw some incredibly fast speeds during practice. Now, I want to kind of look at qualifying from this year and last year, because, they do single car qualifying. And you can definitely tell a difference that this big spoiler and rules package made qualifying wise when they were out there by themselves. Last year, the winning pole speed at the October Talladega race last year, when they didn't have this package, was 195.5. 92.804 miles per hour. This year, the leader, Austin Dillon, for qualifying, had a top speed qualifying of 192.544 miles per hour. So you can really see that that the spoiler definitely slowed them down. And I guess that was kind of the goal of NASCAR, to slow them down to an extent. But you can definitely see the difference in this big spoiler and what it's done this year, or what it did to this race.
Yeah. Like you said, it was crazy to see 204 miles per hour. You know, I didn't expect it. You know, when I seen Ryan Newman, when I got an update, you know, that Ryan Newman had eclipsed 204, I'm like, wow. You know, I never thought in my wildest dreams we'd have 204. But honestly, I don't think that NASCAR intended for speeds to reach this level.
And
honestly,
that's why they made the adjustment. What was it? They made an adjustment after practice 1, I believe.
I think so.
And I mean, the 204 speed, the 204 speed was posted in practice 2 after the
changes were made.
After the changes were made, NASCAR made they consulted with teams, and after opening practices, they tweaked the rules package, adding a 1-inch wicker to the car spoiler in an effort to quell concerns with engine rev and closing speeds. So whatever exactly that is, they added to the spoiler. I think it even helped them go a little bit faster. They did something with revving speeds, and they changed the revving down speeds, I believe it actually was, and somehow I still think that made the cars go just a little bit faster. It probably fixed whatever they were wanting to fix, but it made them go faster, in my opinion, because, I mean, practice one, I mean, top speed was 202.671. Just overall, it was a surprising race weekend, and I think the mystery of what this weekend we were coming into this weekend and the results we're getting, I think, were interesting in themselves, don't you think?
Yeah. Let's talk about the actual race itself. So
yeah, Austin Dillon on the pole, and he was on the pole, but actually his rear deck lid got confiscated. No penalties have yet to come out of that, but deck lid was confiscated, and then you had several cars get sent to the back at the start of the race. Joe Gibbs and Roush Fenway cars both sent to the back. So teams are really trying to bend the rules and play around with the rules. Even Kurt Busch's car chief got ejected. I mean, after they failed inspection twice. So I really think engineers and the teams are really trying to bend the rules to make this new package the most effective. But
yeah, you know, that's got to do what you have to do.
I know
every little bit counts.
I know, but now I guess we can talk about the actual race. I mean, Josh, you go right on ahead. I mean, it was a good race.
Well, yeah. If I would have told you that the big one would have occurred within 10 laps, I feel like it was really, really close to the start of the race. I'm not really sure what lap, but
it was really early.
If Bubba Wallace gets a run on Ryan Blaney, and by the replay, it looked like Ryan Blaney went to block him. But I'm not really sure if he tried blocking him. Bubba did go to the left. He tried going left, and for whatever reason, something with the arrow. Someone was telling me, I'm not sure, but the Camaro. A lot of complaints about the Camaro pushing. Obviously, Camaro finished 1-2, so it couldn't be that bad. But I'm not sure if it's just lack of trying to make big moves that early. Kevin Harvick was very, very displeased with Bubba Wallace. I can't get his quote right off the top of my head, but it was basically saying, guys being too big for their head,
Yeah, he was like, that's basically what it was like, yeah, we got people out there pushing that are too big for their heads. And then he actually saw Bubba Wallace coming out of the out of the medical care center, and apparently said a smart um, smart remark to him that said, I think Kevin Harvick said, like, he asked him, like, do you know how to push, or do you even know how to push? It was something along those lines, just a smart remark that I think, I'm not going to say it's expected of Kevin Harvick, but I think just Kevin Harvick is overall frustrated with this season. So tough look, tough bad break for him.
Yeah, when you're that early into a race, I think if you're Bubba Wallace, of course you knew you were going to get runs. And I think with people knowing that you cannot make those big blocking moves, I think you sort of make that move late in the race. If you're Bubba Wallace, you bump your best friend. This is what you do. You back off a little bit, you get in line, and you play it conservative. There's no need in trying to end your day, within 10 laps of the race. Obviously he wants to get up there and lead and get sponsorships. That's the big thing with his team and RPM. They're lacking sponsorship. So, first place, obviously will get you some TV time. But it seems like week after week he's getting TV time in the garage. And I think, we'll talk about it later on in the season, just, how debatable of a talent Bubba Wallace actually is. But, like I said, we'll get to that later on in the season. But, yeah, from there, you get a couple guys. I think Jimmy Johnson had damage. Now looking at it, you had guys like Matt Tifft, Michael McDowell. I feel bad for those guys because those guys had, David Reagan was up there most of the race. So those teams generally bring a pretty good plate track car. So, what did you think of that situation? Because I don't think you forced the issue that early in the race.
So I truly I don't necessarily think you I agree. I really don't think you force the issue that early in the race, but I'm watching the replay of the wreck right now as we speak. I just think part of what it was, he's pushing on Ryan Blaney pretty tough, and you can see, the hood flaps as he's pushing them pop up. That's how he is he's hitting them pretty good, but Ryan Blaney gets loose and Wallace goes down to pass him. Well, Ryan Blaney's also kind of spinning down, and by that time you got to think you're probably going 180 into the corner. It's hard to
going faster than that.
Probably going faster than that when you have to swerve down 2 lanes and then try to swerve back up to stay off the apron. That's hard to keep a car under control. And maybe when you're a more veteran driver like Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, they could have probably saved it. But I just think that even though, Bubba Wallace has been around for a few years, but I just don't think he had the experience to know how to save it on a track like this. Save the car.
Did you see Martin Truex get Ryan Blaney loose there with like 30 to go, 20 to go? I thought Blaney was going to wreck the whole field.
Blaney did an excellent job keeping that car under. You could see Ryan Blaney's hands through the windshield wheeling that sucker.
That was the big one. That was the big one, but it got prevented. So moving on from that, middle of the race, didn't really see that many cautions. Most of the incidents, you had Eric Almirola. He was leading the race, gets caught speeding heading into pit road. What happens again? I think he got tabbed for speeding again on his drive-through. So he struggled a little bit there early, was able to bounce back. He finished 9th, but I think a lot of people considered Eric Almirola one of the favorites entering the day. Like I said, just lack of cautions, I think. But once they all got settled, they were going 3-4 wide. We couldn't ask for much more.
And I think that's normal after they get comfortable Well, especially on those restarts, getting 3 and 4 wide, I think they're especially there in the back. They're more comfortable with. Of course, up front, you're either going to be single file or double file. I mean, you still even at sometimes at the front, sometime at the front you get um,
Like
2, 3
I
wide.
didn't see like normally you'll go single file like in a big line for like 20, 30 laps. I maybe seen that for like 5 laps as they were trying to get on pit road. Like I didn't see that at all.
What? Well, I think when you did see that was kind of middle of the race and stuff um, when you had it's at the point it was kind of manufacturer versus manufacturer. You
Yeah.
had all the Chevys pitted together, then all the Fords and Toyotas pitted together, and Chevy worked really well together. And that's something they sit down before the weekend. The Chevy teams, and they talked like, "Hey, we're going to try to help each other this weekend." And they did. I mean, most of the times when it was green flags, they stayed together, they pitted together, and at the end of the day, you had, let's see, how you had. I mean, of course, the winner, Chase Elliott, Chevy, Alex Bowman, Chevy, Ryan Preece, Chevy. Then you had Joey Logano Ford, but then you had Daniel Hemrick, Chevy, Kurt Busch, 6th, Chevy. Ryan Newman was up there, 7th, Ford, but Brendan Gaughan, 8th, Chevy. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Chevys in the top 10. That has not been done this season by the Chevy camp. So overall, this was a successful race for the Chevys. But that kind of goes back. But they did, even when they even did get back to the whole double file and stuff. I mean, the double file. I mean, a lot of times it was Chevys all in the same line, and then Fords and Toyotas in one line. I mean, going back to your double, triple file, 3 wide talk.
So, I got a question for you. Now, with all this manufacturing help, if you're a driver, because I seen early in the race, Joey Logano was complaining about Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez was getting runs and he was leaving the Ford drivers. He did it to Blaney, he did it to Logano, and Logano was just fed up with it. He's like, leave that guy's, wide out to dry. I could care less. I'm all for it. That's what he said. I'm all for it. If you're a driver in the Ford camp, and let's say you're Suarez, do you blame Suarez for trying to find the right line, or do you stick ethically, and do you help the Ford camp out because that's what's going to get you a better finishing position later on with like 5 to go? What's your take on that? What would you do during the race?
Well, I'm going to try to come from Daniel Suarez's perspective. He's a younger guy. He's still. I mean, he wants to win at Talladega. I mean, they all do, but I don't think necessarily I think with him being younger, he looks at it. I want to win, and he feels like if with wanting to win, if he feels like the bottom line's a faster line right now, and he's in the top line, and he sees a hole in the bottom line, and he wants to get down and go with that bottom line, even though it might be a group of Chevys, I feel like he would do that. And if I was coming in his shoes, I think I would do that. If I felt like the bottom line was better, then so be it. Let me go to the bottom line.
But you're potentially risking getting dumped. You're potentially risking help at the end of the race. So do you take the early benefit for the lesser finish? Because
I think that's always potential. I think that's always a potential at the end of the. I mean, that's always a potential. But I'm going to go ahead and say this: if Daniel Suarez is nose to nose with Chase Elliott for the finish, and Chase, I feel like if you have Chase Elliott and Daniel Suarez nose to nose for the win at Talladega, and Daniel's got Joey Logano behind him, and say Chase Elliott's got Alex Bowman behind him, I still think with Joey Logano being Joey Logano, or most Ford drivers, I think that Joey Logano doesn't dump him, because I am afraid, unless Joey Logano has a teammate behind him, I am afraid if I'm Joey Logano, if I want to dump him on the last lap, that when I try to go around him, that maybe the people behind me don't follow. just because they see an opportunity to hang me. So say I'm the person behind Joey Logano and I'm not his teammate. Joey Logano's so good at restrictor plates. Joey Logano pulls out a line. I might not go with Joey Logano just because I might want to hang Joey Logano and make – because he's a real factor to win. I might dump Joey Logano so I have a better chance at winning. That's all I'm saying.
I mean –
I think
with 2 to go, it's all, I don't think 2 to go that really applies. But I'm more positioning. Like, you seen Ryan Blaney, he got loose with that Truex deal. He was not able to get back to the front. Yeah. So, I get what you're saying, and I definitely think if I was in his shoes, it's easier for me, being on this mic to say that. But I definitely think with Suarez, he knows that deep down he's probably not going to lead that many laps this year. So he wants to try to get up there and lead as many laps as you can. And another guy, let's talk about this. Every time we're at a plate track, Ricky Stenhouse, he races like a chicken with his head cut off. Like, that's a guy, he races with the Ford camp, but he is not afraid to dump them whenever he sees the lead. Like, he wants to be the leader at all costs at every lap at a restrictor plate.
Ricky Stenhouse has always been like that, so it doesn't surprise me one bit because he wants to win, and he's going to do what it has to take to win. And you know what? He might pull out of line to try to pass someone, and he might get dumped. But what do you know? He's going to make his way back up there just because he's an aggressive. He is an aggressive restrictor plate track racer. He's an aggressive racer when it comes to Talladega and Daytona.
There was times where I was like, wow, you got him and Suarez up there. I'm like, this is a recipe for a disaster. Somehow it worked, but all them aggressive guys get up to the front there, and like I said, I don't know how we didn't have the big one. I thought we'd have it a couple of times, but we didn't.
Well, and I don't know, and I may be absolutely wrong on this, and people might call me out on it. But I feel like why there wasn't necessarily as many wrecks is the downforce that these cars had. I mean, they had a humongous. They had a 9-inch spoiler on the back. You look back to the races where they had I'm trying to think of a few years ago when I think they had a 3-inch spoiler. That's when you saw cars wrecking because they didn't have near as much downforce, so they got a lot. They were able to wreck a lot easier. I don't know if you remember 2 or 3 years ago, Dale Jr. It was I'm pretty sure it was at Talladega. He just spins out on his own. No one touches him. He just spins out on his own. That's when they had that little spoiler, and that's when they didn't have as much downforce. So things like that, you could just spin out just because if you didn't have the grip or you wasn't paying attention, you didn't have the downforce to necessarily save you. I think this year with this aero package and the big spoiler, and I think they did something with the rear bumper too, I believe. I think you had a lot more downforce, and that kept the cars more stable, in my opinion. And I think maybe that's why you didn't have as many wrecks because the cars weren't as out of control or necessarily on edge. I mean, they're always going to be on edge at 200 miles an hour, but I don't think they were a little bit more stable. So I think when you bring a stable car, you don't have as many wrecks.
Yeah, no doubt.
Does that make sense? I think it makes sense in my head. Now, does it actually? I don't know. In my head, it makes sense.
Well, with all that downforce, Kyle Larson seemed to defy the odds and go flying at the end.
He did. That was. I don't know what that was a result of. There's a lot of complaints on the camera angles and stuff like that. Those roof flaps should have prevented.
William Byron comes off.
What?
No, you go ahead.
No, the roof flaps didn't do the job. When he gets going, he was spinning sideways down the backstretch, and so after the wreck happened, he got released from the care center. He said that Jeffrey Earnhardt tapped him and he tipped over. But if you go back And if you go back and watch the replay, I mean, I just think maybe the angle, he got a weird angle, and his car went sideways and it started flipping the roof flaps. Roof flaps didn't do their job. Like, he had already started flipping before his car was already at a 90-degree angle before he even hit the wall. So I think NASCAR is going to go back and look at what went wrong with the car there. And because they try to make that technology, those roof flaps, to prevent cars from going airborne and flipping like that. So I get what was your original question? Oh, what defying the odds? No, I just don't think the roof flaps did the job. And that spoiler, when you're going sideways, I mean, that spoiler's not going to help keep your car on the ground. When you're going sideways, those roof flaps on top are what are supposed to help keep the car on the ground, and they didn't this week.
That was a pretty crazy wreck, because I thought at first that he may or may not go over that infield fence, but luckily he got a couple of breaks and it stayed on the track. It was really scary. We haven't seen a flip like that in some time. And how about this? We talk about this in a second, but a lot of people complaining about not being able to see the camera angle by Fox. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but just crazy wreck. Kyle Larson seemed to be having a great race. He's been struggling all year, but what do you know? If there was going to be anybody flipping, it was going to be him. So, I mean, he really just seems down in the dumps this year. He just needs something to go well. And, he likes these 1.5-mile tracks like a lot of us don't, but that's where he thrives. So we'll see if he can get something going.
It was another restrictor plate race that William Byron is keeping the Fab Shop guys busy wrecking cars.
Yeah, he got off turn 2 there, hit the wall, and I mean that sent everybody going crazy back there. I mean, Chris Buescher's car. Did you see his car?
Yeah,
it ripped the whole front off. Basically,
I think now with these carbon fiber cars, they just disintegrate. I mean, I think they're safe, but the panels and stuff, they just seem to disintegrate on impact. I mean, It just looks like, so especially Chris Buescher's car. I mean, it's like confetti. They had to red flag the race they had to red flag the race so they could clean all the carbon fiber paneling up that came off his car and the rest of the junk.
So that brings us to the final lap. And I talked to you yesterday, and I was really heated about this. I sent out the Twitter question. Got a lot of feedback, which was really nice to see. A lot of people. It's about, I would say, 60-40, 70-30 on they should have put out the caution flag there. Obviously, you had some people that probably more towards my side and let them go green at all costs. But so here's my viewpoint on them flagging it. I did see the piece of debris there a couple of yards away from the finish line. I don't necessarily think that was the problem. Now that I think about it, it's Ricky Stenhouse down there below the yellow line, just a couple more, like 30 or 40 yards. He's just sitting there. But, I could see hypothetically, Alex Bowman, Chase, whoever was in third, I think Priest or someone like that. I could see one of them guys spinning, getting into it on the finish line. They go spinning and they just wipe Stenhouse clean. I could definitely see that. So if you want to give me that, give me that. But I see the piece of debris there, and I'm just like, come on, man. We just we can't call it a caution just because there's a piece of debris. I get the part, if it hits the arrow, it hits the arrow. These guys are going to run to the finish line. Let them beat and bang. If they're going to get any damage, they're going to get damage anyway from beating and banging, hopefully, to get to the finish line. You obviously had that wreck like we just talked about in the backstretch. I think they had plenty of time to miss that. So, and like Steve O'Donnell came out on Twitter yesterday, and he even confirmed that it was that piece of debris before the finish line. So I want to see – now this may just be a super speedway thing, something that they can implement, but I do not want to see a super speedway race called on a caution on the white flag. Because here's the thing. If you're Alex Bowman and the race is going to be called on that final lap, you make your move coming to the white flag. He has no idea they're going to call that for a piece of debris that something happened behind him. I feel bad for those guys. It's so crazy because if I'm second, I'm so pissed because I'm like, well, hell, if they're going to call it, I would have made my move 30, I made my move 2 minutes ago. So I feel bad for those guys, but, I've kind of lightened up on it. I can definitely see why they called it before. I was definitely in question. I sort of thought, it may be the Chase Elliott homer. They want to get him the win. But, I had to calm down on that. But, yeah, I think we disagree on that. So give me your take, because I'm sure a lot more people agree with you on this.
Well, I think NASCAR, I think it was completely the right call. That piece of debris there was in front of the start-finish line, and then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was under the yellow line, but I think he was close to it. The caution flag, I don't think the caution flag wouldn't have been thrown for the wreck that happened on the backstretch. But since Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did spin out, hit the wall, had a big piece of debris laying there in the middle of I think he was in the middle of the second lane, and then his car came to a rest below the yellow line. The reason why I think they threw it is because of the debris and partially because Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was sitting there. Because like you said, with those jokers that were sitting up front, I mean, you might have Ryan Preece or Alex Bowman try to go for a move and spin out of control, and then you have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. sitting in the car right below the yellow line, a sitting duck versus a car that's going 190-something miles per hour. I mean, that's dangerous. That is very dangerous. So in the mind of driver safety, it was the right call. Then the debris, it's going to get, if they're single file coming into the tri-oval, they're about to start spreading out to try to pass to get when they're going to start trying to pass, get into the tri-oval to get that win. So that piece of debris, I don't know exactly what it was. They didn't exactly explain what it was, but it looked pretty firm. It didn't look like no Bondo or anything like that. It looked like a piece of metal or something like that. And that versus a car at 190-something miles per hour would affect the result of that car. Somewhat affect the momentum. If it's nose to nose and one car hits a piece of metal, a big piece of size metal that's bigger than the grill, I think it's going to somehow affect that car in some way in those last distance before the start finish line. And I know probably no one's ever thought it from this perspective. But what if a car does hit that piece of debris and it goes airborne and catches wind and goes into the stands and hits a fan? I don't know if that would happen. Like I said, I don't know exactly what the debris was, but that could happen too if a car was to hit it and send it airborne. It could catch wind and go right into the stands. And that's one thing NASCAR doesn't need is a lawsuit from a piece of debris flying into the stands. So I think it was the right call in compliance with NASCAR rules. I think it was the right call.
That's a fair point. I guess I never thought of that reasoning. Yeah, I mean, throw the caution, line them up again. Let us see a super speedway race end under green. Whether they go to 3 green, white checkers, 4, let the fans. That race was great, and I hate to see that race end under caution because it ended such a great race. I mean, it's not going to affect the outcome. Chase Elliott won, but would we be having this conversation if Chase Elliott wouldn't have won? I think we would be talking about it a little bit more. But, all is well. The most popular driver won. It's good for the sport. Young guys win again. So, I mean, I have no problems. I have no problems with the race. I thought it was a lovely race, probably the best one of the year in my book. If not, it was top 2 or 3. How much time do we have left here?
We probably have let me check our time here. We probably have 5 to 7 minutes left.
Well, let's just keep talking about Talladega. We don't need to talk about Dover. Dover's Dover.
Dover. I mean,
Um,
I will say, well, we'll finish. I'll end on something on Dover just real quick, but we can finish. We can continue talking about Talladega.
so,
Um,
well,
you
you
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead and bring up what point you wanted to bring up.
I, I mean, I just want to continue. Like, can NASCAR make a rule? Like, I'm going to continue saying this, and I know you probably don't agree with me, but I think we need to seriously look into something to have a rule that a super speedway can't end on under caution. Now, I know this is going to affect, fuelage and all that bonanza crap, but I seriously am just a little bit disappointed that race ended under caution.
Well, see, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily disagree with. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you, but you got to think if you give them guys unlimited opportunities to finish the race under green, 2 laps every time at Talladega. If you go green, white, checker, unlimited attempts, no matter a race has to finish under green. You're going to be
That's what
there a
the
while.
fans want. That's what the fans want, and that's what I want to see on the couch.
I know, but I don't know if you remember, and this doesn't necessarily affect, but I don't know if you remember a few years back that the race almost finished under, like it was dark in Talladega when the race finished, and there's no lights at Talladega. Eventually, I feel like you might run into something like that, but I don't know. Maybe for super speedways for Talladega, Daytona, they need to have some kind of line where even if you cross the white flag, until you cross that line, it's an official race, similar to the overtime rule. But say maybe the line is at the exit of turn 4. Like say you come to the white flag, there's a wreck, there's a wreck going into turn 1. Well, since you're not across that line at the end of turn 4, you get to line them back up, go green, white, checker. Now, say it's you come to the white, get arounds 1 and 2 down the back stretch into 3 and 4. There's a wreck, and the leader crosses the line. They're on turn 4. It's an official race. But what?
I'm all for that. I think we were talking about that yesterday. Like something like that needs to happen. I'm not making a big deal out of it because obviously we only have a plate race 4 times a year, but these plate tracks rarely disappoint, and you have a great race like this. Like I said, but I agree 100% with that.
And it's not always. This isn't always the result because they have. I will say, I feel like they have been pretty decent in the past few years of letting the guys race back to the finish. It just so happens this year. Ricky Stenhouse wrecked right there at the start-finish line, coming out of the tri-oval. That was just unfortunate. I can think only a few times off the top of my head that they ended the race under a yellow flag. That was both times I can think of. Dale Jr. finished second. Let's see, I think 3 or 4 years ago when he finished second to Joe Logano by a nose, and then when Dale Jr. finished just second to Jamie McMurray, I think that was 4 years ago. He's driving the bright green, two-tone green Mountain Dew Xbox One car when that was first coming out. He got when he finished second to Joe Logano, that ended right after the start-finish line on turn 2, and then when he finished second to Jamie McMurray, that happened on the backstretch. So I remember that. It is unfortunate. It's unfortunate for Alex Bowman, but it's exciting that Chase Elliott won. So
yeah. Do we have time for Dover picks, or are we
yeah,
running out of
no,
time?
we got time for Dover picks. Who's your Dover pick?
I'm just going to quit picking Kevin Harvick. Seems like every week I pick him, he does not live up to it. I just don't think that program's as strong as it was last year, so I'm just going to quit picking them. I will go with Clint Boyer.
That's a good pick. You know, I'm going to kind of go out of the box, and I'm going to say Jimmy Johnson returns to victory.
Here we go.
Jimmy Johnson returns to victory lane at Dover. That's his play. That's one of his tracks.
You're about to be 0 for 3 this year on Jimmy Johnson picks.
0 for 3. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll see. It was another exciting episode. I swear it went by so quick, but yeah, another exciting episode. We thank everyone for joining us. Remember, check us out on Instagram and Twitter at Burnout Avenue. Go to our website, www.burnoutab.com. Check out all of Josh's blogs. Yeah, like I said, another great show. We look for we missed you. We kind of missed you over the week. I know last week we talked about the whole problems with NASCAR, but we're glad to be back talking about racing because we missed it. I'm sure y'all did too. So anything else, Josh, before we get off here?
Like I said, if you're listening to this, you might as well rate it 5 stars and get you a sticker. So, like I said, just rate us 5 stars, show us a screenshot, message us on Snapchat or not Snapchat, but Twitter, Instagram, and we will send you a sticker. We still have plenty left, but I think that about wraps it up.
Cool. Yeah, they're pretty cool. So, yep, thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next week on Burnout Avenue.